issues are so important that we all have to come together and support. And about a month ago, I seen the Benton McKenzie story. Somebody quoted me a link about that. I said, this is absolutely outrageous to think that the government will actually prosecute a cancer patient. Now, I recently lost my uncle to cancer. I've lost several grandparents, a couple of grandparents to cancer, friends to cancer. And to actually think that the government would deny people their medication, that really bothered me. And then what bothered me more was the fact that the governor of Iowa actually tried to stop marijuana, medical marijuana legalization through his bill policies. And now, the thing is, the governor can actually right this wrong by pardoning Benton McKenzie. I mean, the governor would have pictures of him pardoning turkeys, pigs, chickens, all kinds of farm animals, but will not actually pardon a dying cancer patient. And he keeps hiding behind it, so we can't actually pardon until after the sentencing is complete. Well, you can announce a pardon at any time. That's a cop-out that the governor is using. The other thing I want to actually say is we've got to have our special board that I've appointed to look over the pardons that are going through this, and in 10 years maybe you'll get a pardon. Benton McKenzie doesn't have 10 years in government prison. That is why we have to do something. So we've got to change these laws in the state. That's why I'm happy to introduce the next governor of Iowa, a spine surgeon who can give these guys the spine to actually pass some good legislation here in Iowa, Dr. Hieb.
Thanks very much. Jake actually did a lot. I think that the fact that Benton McKenzie's parents are out of the woods now is because Jake got on and just shamed them into it, you know. He just done a great job. Well, we travel around the state, and I have, you know, I started out as a reluctant politician. The Libertarian Party came to me and said, hey, you know about Obamacare, why don't you come and be our governor candidate? And I said, I got a real job, I'm not a politician. As I've gone around more and more, I've realized it's time that real people step up and take back our state, because we're in dire straits. We're in trouble here. And we're in trouble because since my great-grandfather homesteaded here in 1871, the Iowa government has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And the problem with that is the private sector shrinks and we all get poorer. Now, you always have this canned kind of 20-minute speech that you give, or you have the elevator 3-minute speech, and I always talk about how, you know, to move up the economic ladder, you need to be in a society that produces real goods and services like food, clothing, shelter, you know, medical care, transportation, widgets. We can even produce marijuana, actually. All this stuff. That's what makes life better, and that's what makes people wealthy. But government, and I always say government only produces two things. But coming over here, I realize actually it produces three things. It produces taxation, which takes the money out of your pocket. It produces regulation, which keeps you from getting a job and keeps your boss from paying you as much as he should. And it produces misery. And I've got to say, the misery thing came when I started thinking about poor Benton McKenzie and his family. I mean, you talk about absurd laws. You couldn't pick, you know, I'm not a Republican anymore, but Ronald Reagan said it very well when he said, the government's the problem, more government is not the solution. And you couldn't come up with a more absurd set of laws than you can about marijuana. I mean, you know, we don't kick your door down, and sometimes we kick the wrong doors. We don't kick your door down to make sure that you're not drinking a vodka tonic because you might get into a car. Oh my, you know. We just don't do that, but we do that for marijuana, right? I'm a trauma surgeon. I spent 20 years before I came back to Iowa. I spent 20 years working in a high-level orthopedic trauma center. And let me tell you, we don't see marijuana users. You know, who do we see? We see meth, PCP, and alcohol. Those are the ones that make you violent. Marijuana users, you know, they're not there. They're home eating Cheetos or something, but they're not causing the problems that we're seeing in society. Now, you know, no, I mean, you know, it's just a different whole situation. Let me talk about the other medical aspects of marijuana. You know, I looked into it because of Benton McKenzie. I'm an orthopedic surgeon, so this isn't something I really deal with. But I started looking at the medical aspects of marijuana, and actually there's some awesome medical aspects to marijuana. Here's the problem. As a physician, I say this. Standard medicine, we're the flat earth society. It takes us, we know stuff, basic science-wise. You won't see it for 30 years. And the other problem with standard medicine is, we now have this idea that medicine and science is by a boat, that we have to get everybody in consensus in a room. No, science moves on because somebody who's smart thinks about a problem and figures it out. And in medicine, unfortunately, they're often ostracized. But, I was just told the example of somebody has noticed that their diabetes is under better control when they use marijuana. I can believe this stuff, but it's going to be very hard to convince mainstream medicine, which is why we need liberty. You need to be able to choose the health care and not be forced into a system where you have to take what the government gives you. And that's standard medicine. And it's going to get worse as we get a government health care system, as we're going to. You need freedom. And when you have freedom, then you can freely choose to treat yourself with marijuana, to treat your kids with marijuana oil. You're talking about an absurd situation to have children that benefit, their seizures benefit from having marijuana oil, are spineless, as Jake said, they are spineless, but they haven't taken me up on the offer to give them a spine. The spineless legislature that passes that you can treat your epileptic kids with marijuana oil, but they don't pass legalization for you to have the stuff. What kind of rabbit hole did we fall down? I have to say, I looked into some other things. In 2010, here are the actual statistics. We lost 34,000 people in America. Chrissy was talking about her experience with prescription drugs, and I hear this a lot. Now, my patients probably don't come to me and say, hey, doc, I do better on marijuana, because they're afraid I'm going to turn them in or something. I'm not. But the point is that there are a lot of people out there with that same experience, that they felt miserable on prescription drugs, and marijuana gave them a life back. 34,000 people in 2010 died accidentally of prescription drugs. That doesn't include the people that purposely tried to commit suicide. That's just accident of prescription doctor-prescribed drugs. 17,000 died of alcohol ingestion. Again, that's not suicide. That doesn't consider the homicides. That doesn't consider the alcohol-related motor vehicle accidents or the alcohol-related deaths from cancer. And let me tell you, cancer with alcohol is a big deal. There's a lot of head and neck cancer, and lots of cancer related to breast cancer is related to alcohol ingestion. So alcohol is a bad actor for cancer. But marijuana, in 2010, there were 0 deaths. And, you heard Jake said he talked, the governor has made a big deal about it. I heard him on Simon Conway, or I think it was Simon Conway, he was asked about medical marijuana. He said, oh, well, and about the legalization in Colorado. He said, oh, well, we better have a committee look at it because there are all these bad things I hear about happening in Colorado. Well, I was at the Libertarian National Convention, and I ran into a guy running for Attorney General of Colorado, and there was a guy there that was a district attorney, big district attorney in Colorado. I said, hey, our governor says there's all these bad things happening from marijuana legalization. Tell me what those bad things are. And he said, both of them said, oh, it's horrible. He said in the first quarter of 2014, murder rate's down, all violent crime is down, and school funding is up. Those are the bad things that are happening after they legalized marijuana in Colorado. And I'm surprised that our politicians, gutless as they are, don't see the tax revenue benefit of this whole thing. And I do think that's our biggest hopeful, to restore liberty to Iowa. To me, this is a subset of liberty. We need to shrink government. Government, unfortunately, when it becomes big, it becomes corrupt. And in my opinion, the 2 big parties take money from their special interests. They legislate in favor of those special interests at the expense of all of us. And the only way we're going to save ourselves is to unelect all those guys. We have to just clean house and show the big parties they don't matter to us anymore. Let freedom break out. But in the meantime, the thing I'm hopeful for legalization of marijuana in the short term is it makes money for the state. It's a great capitalist venture, and when you have capitalism, you have taxation, and they get some skim off of it. I love the story about the Girl Scout in Colorado. You probably heard it, but I love it. Who made record Girl Scout cookie sales by setting up outside of a pot shop. I just love that story. That's capitalism at its finest. Unfortunately, the Girl Scouts made her quit. So anyway, I'm really honored to be asked to speak here. I think we need to do this as soon as possible. I think we need to, we'd like to go to help Ben McKenzie in any way we can, and I think Jake's done a lot so far. We'd like to go to his sentencing and stand for freedom, stand for legalizing marijuana. It's not just about medical marijuana. It's about our freedom to choose things that are not criminal in any way to anybody else. And I don't know how we've gotten to the place. I think the other thing, the final thing I'm going to say is I think you should follow the money. If you're, 50% of our prisons are filled up with victimless, non-violent offenders. And we need to take a look at that and say why. Well, there's kind of probably three groups that come together that benefit from marijuana staying illegal. One is the prison system doesn't have to guard murderous thugs; they can guard marijuana users, and they're a kinder and gentler prisoner, I suspect. The other one is our police forces get a lot of money from fighting the drug war, and the only thing we have to show for it really is militarization of our police forces. And finally, the people that are going to lose out the most if we legalize marijuana are the drug lords. I don't know if you've been following this, but somewhere around 50% of their income comes from marijuana, and they're now complaining that they're having the legs cut out from under them just by Colorado and Washington State legalizing it. If more and more states, you want to get rid of the drug lords and the crime, people shooting each other from MS-13 on down, legalize marijuana. It's a real anti-crime move to do, and I think we should be doing it now. I don't mean to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I kind of suspect that some of this disinformation about all the bad things that happen to marijuana, like there was this story about this woman died from marijuana in England. Did you see that? And the story was, this woman had used marijuana for years, no problem. And one night, she's like 38 years old, she dies in her sleep, and the only thing the pathologist can find is that she smoked half a joint before she went to bed. Now, I'm going to tell you, we know the LD50 of all these other drugs. LD50 is the dose at which 50% of people are dead, okay? I can tell you right off the head, LD50 of alcohol is 450. If you go to blood alcohol 450, 50% of people will die. There's no LD50 for marijuana, so why did he even say this, and why did it even get picked up? Who's going to benefit? I hate to say it, but I kind of think some of the disinformation campaign is coming from the drug lords. We're going to lose their shirts over this whole thing. So I'm really pleased about NORML and you guys staying strong on this, and I think it's a subset of our whole problem with liberty. We've lost our liberty to educate our children freely in this state, our liberty to freely contract medical care, our freedom to speak out our religious views without getting fired, our freedom of land use, and our freedom to keep our money in our pocket, not spending it to the government and taxes. Let's take back our liberty in all things. And I hope in November you'll think about the Libertarian Party and Jake and me and Hieb2014.com. We've got to wage electronic warfare against Branstad, so get on the internet and push us out to your friends. Thanks very much. Oh, and sign our petitions if you can.